potato dumplings. So we've got here a kilogram of mashed potato. So for the gnocchi, we're going to bake our potatoes just to keep them as dry as possible, because you don't want extra moisture in your gnocchi dough. Tegan is just piercing the potatoes all over with a fork so that they don't burst in the oven. And then we're simply going to pop them in the oven, 200 degrees for about an hour. You want them completely soft, at which point you leave them to cool enough to just peel the skin, which we'll show you, and then push them through a potato ricer. If you haven't got that, just a masher, ready to finish off your dough. So we are adding 100 grams of plain flour. If you've got the strong 00 flour, that's the best to use, but I've just got plain at the moment, as I'm sure most people have. We're going to use 2 teaspoons of salt, and the reason is because obviously you've got quite a lot of potato here and it needs to have that seasoning, okay? Tiggs, do you want to just grab a metal spoon for me to stir? Now the thing is, when we start mixing this, it's really important that you don't overmix the mixture. But you do still need to form a dough. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to pour. Okay. Tegan has started cutting. Do you want to carry on doing that, Tegan?
Yeah.
So we're going to do a really simple cherry tomato sauce to go with our gnocchi. And we're also going to do just a plain butter and parmesan. Finn doesn't really like tomato very much, unless it's in pizza. And so we're doing that, and so I'll show you both. So I've just combined it, keep stirring, making sure that it is mixed, okay? And then you can use your hand just to mix it a little bit, bring it together. Okay? And what you're doing is you're creating a dough, but you don't want it to overwork the gluten to make it really stodgy. You just want to bring it all together so that it sticks together basically when we cook it, because we're going to bring a pan of hot boiling water to the heat and then drop our gnocchi dumplings in to the water to cook them. Okay. So Finn's joined us to help us roll our gnocchi. I've made the dough here, it's still very soft, and your hands can get quite sticky, so I've just got a bit of extra flour that I can rub my hands with. You can use rice flour or a little bit of polenta flour to do this. Right, so what we do is we're going to take a piece like this, it's cutting down, I'm going to pop that there for now, and I'm going to roll it into cylinder shape. Now you want it to be, want them to all be roughly the same size, which is why I'm doing the cylinder. Right, so we're going to go for about that size. Now if you haven't got one of these, you can just use a cutlery knife, that's absolutely fine. And you then are going to try and keep them all roughly the same size. So we're looking at sizes about these are about 1.5 centimeters wide. Okay, and there's lots of different ways you can roll gnocchi. You can either just do little dumplings like that, so you can just do little balls like that, okay, or you can use the back of your fork and you can roll them, so you can go like that and just roll them off, and that just gives them a nice little delicate, like that there. That's quite similar to the ones that you see in the shop. So I'm not pushing down hard, I'm just gently pushing it so that it rolls and gets the pattern on the top as it rolls off my fork like that. Okay, there's lots of different ways you can do it, so it's up to you. You can even just keep them flat like that and just push them down so that they've got a little piercing fork in. Another way you can do it is just to take your little squares and then just squeeze them in the center so they've just got a little bit of shape, like a little bit of a pillow. So decide what shape you're going to use. Obviously if you're doing them for the whole family, you might want to all decide on the same shape, unless you're going to keep some for another day. So what do you think? What do you want to do?
Pillow shapes.
You're going to do the pillow shapes?
Those ones.
Okay, you're going to try them rolling with the fork, or you're pushing the fork down. And Finny, let's each have a go while I'm doing yours. So you want to try and get them all roughly the same. So if you just use your finger as a guide just to keep them roughly the same shape. Okay, that's it. That's quite big, Tiggs. So that's about 2 centimetres. You're looking at about, if you take one of mine, just to give you a rough idea. What you can do is you can take a piece of gnocchi like Tiggy's doing, and then just move it over so that you get, let go a second, you're getting roughly the same size like that all the way along. Okay, until you get the hang of it, because those are a little bit big. Because you want them all to be roughly the same size, because otherwise they'll cook at totally different times, which is not ideal. Right, so I'm just going to use, you can use a knife as well to cut it. I'm going to make a thinner cylinder now. Okay, and then when you've got them done, just pop them onto a plate. And then what happens is, the gnocchi, said Finny, try and make them all the same size, good boy. No rush, mind your fingers. They're not too big. Are they the same size? That's it. As they cook, they will rise to the surface of the pan. I've got a spider spoon which just helps me scoop the cooked gnocchi off the top. If you haven't got one, a slotted spoon is absolutely fine, and failing that, you can very carefully pour, an adult can pour the contents into a colander in the sink, but that can sometimes make them split slightly. Okay, right, lovely.
Because I need to change the shape of it.
So for our gnocchi, I've got water coming to the boil here to cook the actual gnocchi. I'm making a very, very simple cherry tomato sauce, which is just a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to pop the cherry tomatoes in and start cooking those up. Make sure you're careful with anything splitting up. My garlic, well, I've already, you will just grate that and pop that in as well. And all you're doing is slowly softening the tomatoes so that they release their juice into that lovely olive oil, and then a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and a few basil leaves, and that's my tomato sauce. So I'm just going to let those go. How simple was that? Really, really simple. Those are nice ripe cherry tomatoes, which is exactly what you want. Okay, grinded pepper over there, sprinkle of salt, and then my basil leaves I'm going to tear into there at the last minute. And then I'm going to wait for the water to come to the boil, cook my gnocchi, which I'll show you shortly, and then pour some of this lovely sauce, spoon it, I should say, onto each of my bowls of gnocchi. For those who don't want to have a tomato sauce, all I'm going to do, I'll show you shortly before I do it, is I'm just going to melt some butter into this pan. I'm going to let it slightly colour. You obviously don't want burnt butter, but slightly browned butter is absolutely delicious. Either with a little bit of sage, you can put some herbs in, or simply you just pop the cooked gnocchi into it, give it a very gentle stir because you don't want to break up your gnocchi, pop it into a bowl and grate some parmesan onto the top to keep it very simple. So that's my tomato sauce, very basic, and then we'll move on to the gnocchi. So boys, I've got a pan of water that I'm bringing to the boil. As you can see, it's starting to boil now. You're then going to drop in your gnocchi. It's really important that you don't drop it from a dizzy height up here, because otherwise the water is more likely to splash and hurt you. So make sure that you're just gently popping them in. Obviously you want to coat the bottom with gnocchi. You don't want to overfill it. So you might want another member of the family to also be doing a pan if you're serving dinner for everyone at the same time, obviously. I would say obviously make sure an adult is with you. For boys in year 4 and 5, this might be a bit too tricky, and you do need to be careful not to burn yourself. So I highly recommend an adult does this part. Now what we're doing is, Our gnocchi is cooking at the bottom of the pan, and as it's cooked, it will start rising to the surface. So you want to make sure that you don't leave too long a gap between the first and the last gnocchi that you put into the pan. And we're going to leave it to simmer away, and it'll start rising to the surface. Now we've made the cherry tomato sauce, so I will simply heat that up and spoon some over the gnocchi that is going to have that. You could just spoon in some pesto into your gnocchi and serve it like that with a bit of extra parmesan. Or as we said, you can heat a pan up with some butter and just have a nice coating of butter on your gnocchi with a little bit of extra parmesan on the top. It's totally up to you. So you can see they're starting to come to the surface. And once the last one comes to the surface, I'm just going to give them a couple of minutes to cook, and they'll be ready. This is my spider spoon that I was telling you about, that I can scoop this off the surface. If you don't have one of those, which I'm sure not all of you will, you can just use a small sieve, or failing that, you can get an adult to put a colander in the sink, and the adult will need to pour the boiling water into the colander, because obviously it will produce a lot of steam as the water pours into the colander. So you can see they're all rising to the surface now, which means that they're cooked. So very, very quick cooking process. You want to make sure your sauce and everything are well and truly ready, unless of course you're spooning on some pesto. That's already done. So yeah, very simple to make really. A little bit time consuming with the baking of the potatoes, and then obviously using a potato ricer, but once you've done it a couple of times, you'll find it really easy, and I'm sure you will enjoy them. Right, so those are ready. I'm now going to scoop them out like that, and I'm going to pop them onto my plate like that. Spoon on my sauce, ready to go, and that's it. Make sure you turn off the gas. Well done, boys. Give it a go and send me some pictures.